Okay, we're going to start by looking at what Piyush Goyal, India's Commerce Minister, has talked a little bit about e-commerce and the use that big e-commerce companies are, the method that they are using to try and take away the margins of profits of the smaller retailers. They do it subtly, is what he's trying to say. Now, he also mentioned that this might be illegal because FDI is allowed in only business to business, but the large retailers are utilizing their business in business to consumer, that's B2C, which he says is not quite allowed. And he also talks about online retailers like Amazon selling directly to the consumers. And he questions about the legality about this. Apart from this, he has talked about how, you know, the fact that these retailers, their involvement of local retailers in the supply chain could change the way the engagement between the two are, so that, you know, that the profit margins of the local retailers are not really taken away too quickly. The large e-commerce companies, you know, are working in a gray area, is what he says, because really speaking, there needs to be some deliberation about this, and the government is seized of the matter. They're looking at it because they are quite, they are utilizing, they seem to be declaring losses in their countries, but they seem to be utilizing those losses in a strange way by cutting the margins of the small retailers in India. He says that there need to be more transparency in this, and this issue needs a lot more deliberation, which the government is seized of the matter. Apart from this, he's also talked about India's involvement in exports. India is currently only about 2% of the world exports market. It should double that to 4%. He's exhorting companies to try and export more because exporters should look at the world market, which is still about $30 to $35 trillion of trade. So despite, you know, being depressed at the current time because of the global scenario, $30 to $35 trillion of trade is the size of the market, and India should exploit that, moving up from 2 to 4% because India is growing. And the government is going to provide assistance in the sense that India is going to be dotted with industrial parks, because these industrial parks will become some centers basically for exports. So let's listen to what Piyush Goyal first said about e-commerce sites. Let's listen to what he told us.
E-commerce doesn't attack every part of the retail store. If any of you has ever studied a retail store, it may have 100 items on display. But out of those 100 items, it's not as if all of them have an equal contribution to the survival of that retail store. What does e-commerce do? We all think that, oh, they are making things so much cheaper. If I go to a store and buy a 5-star chocolate or a box of chocolates, it's going to cost me 500 rupees. I can get it delivered on e-commerce for 350 rupees. It's because that's the item which had the largest margin. E-commerce is eating into the small retailers' high value, high margin products, which are the only products through which he survives.
Well, and Piyush Goyal also was quite clear that large e-commerce companies are using unfair business practices to gain market share. I was trying to say that, a little bit about that. And it's more than just predatory pricing is what he says. But Mr. Goyal also did later clarify that he was not against e-commerce per se. He is only for free trade. I mean, not free trade, but fair trade, and also ensuring that e-commerce platforms are not used to harm small retailers and domestic industries.
$1 billion is not coming in for any great service or any great investment to support the Indian economy. They made $1 billion loss in their balance sheet that year. They have to fill in that loss. And how did that loss get caused? They paid 1,000 crores to professionals. If you make 6,000 crore loss in 1 year, does that not smell of predatory pricing to any of you? What did that loss come on? They are, after all, an e-commerce platform. They are not allowed to do B2C. The e-commerce platform legally cannot do business to consumer. But they only reroute all the business through an entity to show that it's business to business.
So let's talk to Dr. Nilanjan Banik. He's an economist, a professor at the Mahindra University, about what the Commerce Minister said. Dr. Banik, do you think that the retail space needs more regulation? Piyush Goyal, also gave an example actually of Switzerland prohibiting geographical discrimination of prices.
So let me break it down into very simple terms. If I'm talking about price discrimination, which means that you are selling to different consumers who are located in different geographical area in a different manner. For instance, if I'm a doctor, I am charging maybe a higher price to my patient in an area which I perceive is a high income neighborhood. On the other hand, I may actually charge a lower price if my idea is that I want to practice in an area which is a low income neighborhood. Why? Because at the end of the day, be it a retailer, be it any manufacturer, they want to maximize what we call revenue. So if you are charging a high price in a low income neighborhood, then you are not going to maximize your revenue. So this is what we call third degree price discrimination. Now, coming back to the example of Amazon, or for that matter, any big retailers who are doing business in India, of course, there is a study which kind of showcased that the price Amazon is charging for similar product in Germany is least, whereas for India, it tends to be on the higher side. Now, one can always argue that what is the rationale for Amazon to charge a higher price in a country like India, where in terms of per capita income, we have a majority of the people whose per capita income is much lower than what you find in Germany. So going by that doctor example, in a way, Amazon should be charging, or for that matter, any e-commerce should be charging a much lower price in India, because the purchasing power per capita wise is much less in India as compared to Germany. But on the other hand, what we find over here is e-commerce, big giant like Amazon and others, the study showcased they are charging a higher price. So going by that narrative, maybe what our minister is saying, I don't think that.
He's saying that they are charging much less, actually, because they are taking much less than the local market charges.
Yes.
So as a result of that, because the margins were much higher on certain products. Yeah, well, let me just come back to can brick and mortar retailers actually benefit from linking with the online retailers, or should their business model be preserved? Like we seem to be losing the corner shops. Is that a problem?
So again, if you look at the retail space, you have mom and pop stores, you have big corporate houses like Reliance, Aditya Birla Fashion, Tata's, who are playing in the retail space. Also, you have e-commerce giants. Now, what is maybe happening is there is some kind of profit element that this e-commerce giant are taking away because of their big power from the supplier who are supplying and trying to sell their product through this e-commerce giant. So in that way, maybe they are taking the markup profit, higher markup profit from the Indian small suppliers or the retailers who are trying to sell their produce through this e-commerce website, which in a way is translating to a per unit higher price compared to Germany. So that was what I was trying to say, that they have to make up some of the profit of operating in India. That's what explained the price difference between, let's say, India and Germany. It is trying to argue that because it's a big player, they're able to squeeze the margin of the small retailers who are trying to sell their produce through their platform.
Absolutely. So it's much bigger on scale. So as a result, obviously they can bring down their margins, and the volumes are so much higher that they will make the profits. But do you find malls also, will need to adapt to this online market space? Because, there's a lot of investment in them, because those shops cost quite a lot of money. The buildings are kind of grand. And at the end of the day, if people are going to buy everything online, these shops will also go out of business.
Again, if I look into the big corporate houses in India, be it D-Mart, be it Reliance Retail, be it Aditya Birla Fashion, be it Trent, these are the big players who are operating in the retail space in the Indian market. Now, if you look into their profitability over the last 1 year, it has actually increased by leaps and bounds, which is getting translated to their higher stock market prices, which at which they are trading now. So in terms of course, they took a hit. Like we know that Big Bazaar they closed after the COVID time because they are not able to open their business. But in particular, starting 2022 and until as we speak, most of these retail markets, which are operated by the big corporate houses, they are actually making money, which kind of tell me another thing, that if these people are making money, just think how much more money Amazon-like people are also making, because they are the ones who are actually negotiating hard with the small retailers who want to sell their produce through through their platform. So the platform of always operating a scale which is much higher than what even the corporate sectors are operating. For instance, Reliance Retail or DMart, things like that.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Dr. Banik. Thank you for explaining this to us. Thanks for joining us on the Economic Brief.
Thank you.
Let's move on.